Hi, everyone. So today, let's talk about Peter Turchin. I listened to another podcast featuring him, and I think I finally understand his three central tenets. So nations decline when all three factors happen. So immiseration, believe it or not, is a term that very likely was first coined by Marx. When I first heard Peter Turchin use immiseration, automatically I thought about Marx because obviously, as you guys know, I have read a little bit of Marx. Now, Peter Turchin is Russian, and I don't know if his use of the term came from Marx or it's just something that was tossed around a lot during the Soviet Union period. In any case, he defines immiseration as the quality of life gets worse and worse. I think Marx defined it a little bit more. Marx defined immiseration as when your real wages decline due to certain capital influences. But in the case of Peter Turchin, just think of immiseration as your standard of living, your quality of life is either not catching up or even getting worse to what's going on in the economy. Next thing, which we've talked about before, is elite overproduction. Elite overproduction is basically not enough positions in society, not enough roles in society for a group of people that you've built up, you've trained up. You can think of this status-wise, you can think of this financially, you can think of this education-wise, maybe too many people trained to work in the government, not enough government jobs, too many millionaires for what the economy needs, maybe too many Ivy League graduates for whatever positions that want Ivy League graduates. The problem with this is that this creates a class of people, often highly educated, often with resources, often with intelligence, who can't channel whatever talents, whatever energy correctly. And then this word Peter Turchin used that took me a while to understand what he's saying, he calls it a wealth pump, but I just call it a wealth transfer. It's another way of saying the people who have the means, the people who have the wealth, who have the power, keep getting more and more of it. One comment some of you might say is, isn't these two basically two sides of the same coin? While at first they seem like two sides of the same coin, they aren't necessarily two sides of the same coin. Let me explain. Imagine an economy. Think of this as how much stuff every group of people have, right? Some groups of people have less stuff. Some groups of people have more stuff. Look at this. This is if there were wealth pump without immiseration. Everyone has more stuff, but the people on top have way, way, way more stuff. So everyone's absolute whatever, absolute things they have, absolute wealth, whatever you call it's going up. But obviously from a relative term, these people have more. As compared to this, the people on the bottom keep getting poorer, keep having less stuff, keep being less happy. People on the top keep having more stuff. This is wealth pump plus immiseration. So I hope I showed it visually. So that in a nutshell summarizes at least what I've heard of Peter Turchin's arguments for how a nation declines. If all three of those conditions are fulfilled, then a nation's probably not going in the right direction. So let's apply that to modern day, whatever country you're from. Do these three conditions occur? First up, immiseration. Do you feel like you're doing worse than before? I think that's a general question to ask. If you feel like you're doing worse than before, maybe your purchasing power is going down, maybe just something's off, you're working harder, maybe healthcare costs have gone up, something doesn't seem right, then probably immiseration is occurring. Now, elite overproduction. I think even without generative AI coming out these past few years, a lot of fields were already bubbled, and a lot of fields were already overproducing talent. Fields that I can think of were, of course, the computer fields, the computer science, the programmer field. Even before generative AI came out, I think there was a bubble that burst. The whole learn to code, right? Created too many of those types of STEM elites. And then in general, you could say the higher education bubble. A lot of the world bought into, you have to go to college after high school. Higher education is the way. There's no other path. So we overproduced college graduates. So likely, if you're watching this, immiseration is a standard and elite overproduction is a standard. Now, is wealth pump, is the wealth transfer happening? And I think a lot of people would agree on that too, especially since the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, 2009, there was a big wealth transfer. The rich got way more richer. And some of this is not necessarily caused by people. It's almost like a law of nature. Things with resources, things that are already big tend to get bigger, drowning out and taking away opportunity for other things that aren't as big. You can see it with forests. You can see it with city sizes. Some people call it the Pareto principle. So whether the wealth pump is something natural or is something natural that gets exacerbated by bad policy, the wealth pump, I think very few people would disagree that it's not happening. So we can then apply this paradigm to one of the most fascinating periods in Chinese history. So when I was in China this time, I went to Nanjing, and Nanjing was the capital of one of the rebellion movements during the late Qing dynasty. For those of you who are familiar with Taiping Tianguo, so during the late Qing dynasty, there's this guy Hong Xiuquan, and he founded kind of like a distorted Christian kingdom, carved quite a lot out of the Qing dynasty during its rebellion. And the civil war was so deadly, I think it's the number 2 most deadliest civil war. China has the historical record for having the deadliest and the second deadliest civil wars of all time. And this one, I think, is number 2. So then we can apply this paradigm and see the period that led up to that civil war match this. So first step, immiseration. Was the average person not doing well / feeling like their life was declining? I think that's an absolute. Now, here's an interesting question. Was there elite overproduction during that time? China back then had these civil examinations, which were ways for commoners to get government positions to quote unquote get into the elite. Now, in many periods of China, especially when things were declining, these civil examinations were extremely corrupt. There was a lot of bribery. There was a lot of positions being decided in spite of the examination results. Now, was that because there was an elite overproduction? I don't know. For this point, I can't confirm it, but what I can say is the founder of the rebellion wanted to get here and couldn't get here. He sort of founded his counter-elites, right? Counter-elites is another point that Peter Turchin talks about. And then the final point, was there a wealth pump? Was there wealth transfer? And I would say yes. If you ever go to China, I would recommend go to some of those cities that have a lot of history and tour manors, the mansions, the places of residence for some of the rich people during that era of China. You'd be so impressed at their living situations. So much square footage, lakes, beautiful nature in their manors. So there was a big wealth disparity. I would say some of that wealth disparity is the reason why the communists were able to attract so many people once China entered its Republican phase, because a lot of those landowners, those rich people that generations ago had the wealth pump, were still owning a lot of land while everyone else was starving. So there we go. That's my summary of Peter Turchin. Again, I should read Peter Turchin's book, and I'm sure I'll have more insights. I hope this is just a gateway. I hope this is just a bridge for you guys to go read Peter Turchin and anything else that interests you. It took me years to finally give Peter Turchin a listen, and I'm glad I did. So I encourage all of you, whatever you wanted to learn, go do it. Even little bits of it. Your brain will be so happy. So I thank you guys so much. A lot more to come.